I was once the family disappointment, the son who could never measure up. On my 25th birthday, instead of cake and presents, I got kicked out with nothing but a backpack, and my father's harsh words ringing in my ears. 7 years later, I own a successful property development company and a luxury home in Boston's most exclusive neighborhood. The sweetest irony: the family who threw me away now stands on my doorstep with legal papers claiming my hard-earned success as a family asset. Before I reveal how I responded to my family's outrageous demand, let me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to toxic family members. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, I always felt like the square peg in a round hole. My father, Richard, was an accountant who valued structure, traditional success, and above all, appearances. Everything in our colonial-style home was meticulously organized, from the alphabetized spice rack to our scheduled family activities. My older siblings, James and Megan, thrived under this regimented approach. James excelled academically, eventually attending Harvard Law School. Megan was the perfect daughter, studying medicine and making our father proudly list her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. Then there was me. From an early age, I gravitated toward building things and dreaming up business ideas. While other kids had lemonade stands, I created a neighborhood lawn care service by age 12, hiring friends and handling scheduling. When I built a treehouse that neighborhood kids paid to visit, my father called it playing around instead of seeing my entrepreneurial spirit. Real success comes from education and respectable professions, he would lecture during dinner, gesturing toward James and Megan. Not from risky ventures and pipe dreams. My mother, Nancy, was a kindergarten teacher who avoided conflict at all costs. When my father criticized my ambitions, she would give me sympathetic looks, but never contradicted him. "Your father wants what is best for you," she would whisper, later patting my shoulder. "Security is important, Adam." Despite my protests, I enrolled in business school at my father's insistence. "At least get your degree before chasing fantasies," he demanded. I tried, I really did. But sitting in classes discussing theoretical business cases when I wanted to build real businesses felt like slowly suffocating. During my junior year, I developed an app connecting homeowners with local contractors, an early version of what would later become a cornerstone of my business. When a small tech journal published an article about promising student startups featuring my project, I thought my father would finally see my potential. Instead, he threw the magazine across the kitchen. "This is why your grades are slipping. Playing entrepreneur instead of securing your future." 2 months later, I dropped out. The explosive family dinner that followed still echoes in my nightmares. My father called me irresponsible, ungrateful, and his favorite term, a perpetual disappointment. James suggested I might have attention deficit disorder. Megan quietly studied her plate. My mother cried. I moved into a tiny apartment and took odd jobs while developing my business idea. When those first ventures failed, I worked as a barista, a delivery driver, and a night security guard, often sleeping only 4 hours between shifts. Each failure taught me valuable lessons, but my family only saw the struggles, not the education. My 25th birthday began with cautious optimism. After months of silence, my mother called, suggesting a family dinner at Giovanni's, my favorite restaurant growing up. "Everyone wants to reconnect," she promised. "Your father is ready to talk." I arrived early, wearing my only decent shirt, hair freshly cut. When my family entered, my father did not even shake my hand. They ordered expensive wine without including me in the selection. As appetizers arrived, my father cleared his throat. "We wanted to discuss your future," he began, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. "It has been nearly 3 years since your impulsive decision. Your mother and I think it is time you moved back home, returned to school, and stopped this entrepreneurial nonsense." When I explained that I had just secured a promising partnership for my contractor network platform, he scoffed loud enough for neighboring tables to notice. "Enough excuses," he interrupted. "You have been playing business while living in squalor. James was already an associate at his firm at your age. Megan had completed her residency. Different paths work for different people," I tried explaining. "I am building something meaningful, even if it does not follow your timeline." That is when he exploded. In the middle of Giovanni's, he called me a disgrace to the family name and a perpetual child playing make-believe. He detailed each of my failures while dismissing every small success. James and Megan stared at their plates. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "It is time to grow up or get out," my father concluded. "We are done subsidizing your delusions with family resources." The truth was they had not given me a dime since I dropped out. I had been completely self-sufficient even while struggling. "I am already grown up," I responded quietly. "And I have already been out of your house for years." My father threw cash on the table for the bill. "Then it is time you were out of our lives until you have something worthwhile to show for yourself. Do not come back until you have made something of yourself." They followed me home to my apartment where my father supervised as I packed a backpack with essentials. My lease, which was in my father's name as a guarantor, would not be renewed the following month. My mother slipped me $300 when my father was not looking. James and Megan watched silently from the doorway. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered, as the door closed behind them, leaving me effectively homeless on my 25th birthday. I had 1 month's rent, left $300 in cash, and about $700 in my bank account. Everything I had worked for seemed to collapse around me. When my lease expired the following month, I moved into my 10-year-old Honda Civic. I signed up for a 24-hour gym membership that gave me access to showers and a place to brush my teeth. Every morning I would clean up change into my one decent outfit and head to a local cafe with free Wi-Fi to continue developing my business plan and applying for jobs. 3 weeks into this routine, I overheard a gruff voice at the cafe counter. "Damn supply chain delays. Now I need to find someone today who can help with basic construction, or this project falls behind schedule." The man was in his 60s with calloused hands and a faded tape measure clipped to his belt. I approached him cautiously. "Excuse me," I could not help overhearing. "I am looking for work and I am good with my hands." Max Henderson looked me up and down skeptically. I certainly did not look like a construction worker in my cafe-appropriate button-down. "Ever frame a wall? Run electrical? Any experience at all, kid?" I admitted I had none, but emphasized my willingness to learn and work hard. Something in my desperation must have resonated with him. $8 an hour cash. "Be at this address at 6 a.m. tomorrow. If you are late or lazy, do not bother showing up again." That first day nearly broke me. My soft hands blistered within hours. My back screamed from carrying lumber. But I stayed until the last nail was hammered, returning to sleep in my car, exhausted but employed. Max noticed my car in the parking lot the next morning, windows fogged from my breath as I slept. He knocked on the window at 5:30 a.m., startling me awake. "You living in there, son?" My shame was answered with unexpected compassion. Max offered me a cot in the back room of his workshop and an opportunity to learn the construction trade properly. $8 becomes 12 once you know what you are doing, he explained. Becomes 15 when you can work unsupervised. Room is free until you get on your feet. For the next year, I absorbed everything Max taught me about construction. Framing, electrical work, plumbing, finishing. I became proficient in all of it. Evenings were spent updating my contractor networking app, now informed by actual industry experience. Weekends were for odd jobs that paid extra cash every dollar going into my savings account. When I had saved $8,000, I approached Max about my idea. "There is this foreclosed property on Willow Street. Complete disaster, but the neighborhood is improving. The bank wants to unload it for $40,000, and I think I can qualify for a loan with my savings as down payment." Max drove me to see the property, a fire-damaged single-family home with a collapsed roof section and severe water damage. Where others saw ruin, I recognized opportunity. "You sure about this, kid? This is more than a fixer-upper. This is a rebuild." I had never been more certain of anything. With Max co-signing the loan, I purchased my first property. For 6 grueling months, I worked my day job with Max, then headed to my project house renovating until midnight. Max loaned me tools and expertise. YouTube tutorials filled in the knowledge gaps. I learned to dumpster dive behind other construction sites for discarded materials I could repurpose. When I finally listed the renovated house for sale, it sold within a week for $110,000. After loan repayment and taxes, I cleared $37,000 in profit. Not life-changing money, but enough to prove my concept and do it again, this time with 2 properties simultaneously. My business model, developed through experience: find the worst house in an improving neighborhood, renovate efficiently using my growing knowledge of construction, and sell quickly for reasonable profits. Each success built upon the last. By year 3, I had renovated 7 properties and hired 2 full-time employees, both people Max had recommended, who needed second chances. Year 4 brought my breakthrough opportunity. A downtown warehouse abandoned for decades and considered an eyesore came up for auction. Most developers avoided it due to zoning complications and extensive remediation needs. I spent weeks researching creative solutions to these problems, presenting a comprehensive plan to the city council for converting the space into affordable loft apartments with street-level retail. My passion and detailed planning won approval where larger developers had failed. That project put me on the map. Callaway Developments, revitalizing forgotten spaces, became my company's slogan. Local business journals began featuring my projects. The mayor invited me to join the Urban Development Committee. Investors who had ignored my early proposals now called weekly. By year 5, I expanded to neighboring cities. By year 6, I had a staff of 30 and projects in 3 states. In year 7, I purchased the property that would become my home, a historic mansion in Beacon Hill that had fallen into disrepair, which I lovingly restored to its former glory while adding modern amenities. Throughout these years, I had no contact with my family. There were moments, Christmas mornings, milestone accomplishments, when I considered reaching out. But the memory of that birthday dinner always stopped me. Instead, I built a different kind of family. Max became the father figure I needed, offering wisdom without judgment. My early employees grew into trusted friends. Even my banker, Sophia, became part of my inner circle after believing in me when my loan applications looked questionable on paper. Sometimes I would see myself mentioned in business publications and wonder if my family ever saw these articles, if they ever regretted their ultimatum. But I never Googled them or checked social media. The past remained firmly behind me as I built my future. The doorbell rang at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. I was enjoying coffee on my terrace, overlooking the Boston Common, reviewing plans for a new development. Wondering who would visit unannounced, I made my way through the house, admiring, as always, the original woodwork I had spent months restoring. Opening the door, I froze. Standing on my porch was my entire family: father, mother, James, and Megan. 7 years older, but immediately recognizable. My mother had more gray in her hair. My father stood slightly stooped. James looked polished in designer casual wear. Megan held a gift basket awkwardly. "Adam." My mother spoke first, her voice trembling. "You look wonderful." The silence stretched uncomfortably until I found my voice. "This is unexpected. May we come in?" James asked, professional and poised as always. "We would like to talk." I stepped aside, leading them into my living room with its soaring ceilings and restored fireplace. Their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the obvious signs of wealth: original artwork, custom furniture, the view of the common through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Quite a place you have," my father said, his tone unreadable. "You have done well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied stiffly. "What brings you here after 7 years?" They exchanged glances before my mother spoke. "We have been following your success, Adam. Those articles about the Riverside development in Providence, the award for the Historical Preservation Project. We are so proud. We always knew you had potential," my father added, as if he had not spent years telling me exactly the opposite. The conversation continued awkwardly. They asked surface-level questions about my business. I provided minimal answers. Megan mentioned she was now chief of pediatrics at her hospital. James spoke of his law practice, specializing in family and estate law. My father had retired. They carefully avoided mentioning our last encounter or the years of silence. After 30 minutes of this strained small talk, James cleared his throat and reached into his leather messenger bag. "Actually, Adam, there is a specific reason for our visit." He withdrew a folder containing legal documents. My stomach tightened instinctively. As I was reviewing some family matters, James continued sliding the folder across my coffee table. I realized there is an interesting legal situation regarding your company and assets. What situation? I asked, not touching the folder. Well, James leaned forward, slipping into what I recognized as his professional tone. Technically speaking, your initial business ideas and early development occurred while you were still legally part of our household. Your father was still your guarantor on your apartment lease, and you used skills and connections developed during your upbringing. I stared at him in disbelief as he continued. Under certain interpretations of family law, particularly regarding intellectual property and business entities that originated within the household, there is a case to be made that Callaway Developments and its subsequent assets could be partially considered family property. The room seemed to tilt slightly. You cannot be serious. We have supported you throughout your formative years, my father interjected, provided education, housing opportunities. Those investments contributed directly to your current success. Supported me, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You kicked me out on my birthday. I lived in my car. A temporary situation that ultimately motivated your success, James countered smoothly. Which is exactly the point. The family environment, even in its challenges, directly contributed to the business person you became. I noticed Megan shifting uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. My mother stared at her hands. We have been watching your progress for years, my father admitted. Those profiles in Entrepreneur magazine, the feature in Boston Business Journal, your Riverside development made national news. That magnificent property in Cape Cod, Megan suddenly added. The one you renovated last year. It would make such a lovely family vacation home. And there it was. The true purpose of their sudden reappearance in my life. Not reconciliation. Not genuine pride in my accomplishments. They wanted a piece of what I had built. What exactly are you asking for? I kept my voice steady. James tapped the folder. We are proposing a family trust that would recognize a 30% interest in Callaway Developments and its subsidiaries as family assets. This would acknowledge the foundational contributions to your success while allowing you to maintain operational control. 30%. I let the number hang in the air. Of everything I built while you were completely absent from my life. We are family, Adam, my father said, leaning forward. Blood is thicker than water. We always believed in you. I met my mother's eyes, searching for some sign of shame or recognition of the absurdity of their demand. She looked away. I need time to consider this, I finally said, knowing I needed to consult my attorneys immediately and to review these documents with my legal team. James smiled confidently. Of course. Take all the time you need. We are just happy to be reconnecting as a family after too much time apart. They left their contact information and departed, my father pausing at the door to squeeze my shoulder in what I suppose he thought was a paternal gesture. It is good to see you, son. We knew you would make something of yourself eventually. The moment they left, I called my attorney, Barbara Chen, and explained the situation. She requested the documents immediately and asked me to gather any evidence of my family's abandonment. This is a ridiculous claim, she assured me. But unfortunately, ridiculous claims can still be costly and time-consuming to fight. Let us see what we are dealing with. After sending her the documents, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of everything I had built without them, and felt the rage I had suppressed for years finally surface. Not only had they thrown me away, but now they wanted to claim credit for and ownership of my success. I would not allow it. Not one penny, not 1 square foot of property, not 1 share of my company would go to the people who had left me homeless on my birthday and never checked to see if I survived. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Thursday, not at my home as my family might have expected, but at Barbara Chen's downtown law offices. I arrived early to review our strategy one final time. Everything is prepared, Barbara assured me, straightening papers in the conference room. You are completely protected. My family arrived as a unit, James, leading with a leather portfolio, my father looking confident, my mother and Megan following behind. They seemed surprised by the formal setting but quickly composed themselves. We were hoping for a more intimate family discussion, my father commented, as they took their seats. This is a legal matter, I replied evenly. This seems the appropriate venue. Barbara began by introducing herself as my chief legal counsel and laying out the agenda for our meeting. James appeared mildly annoyed at her control of the proceedings, but maintained his professional demeanor. Before we discuss the documents you presented to my client, Barbara said Mr. Calloway would like to present some materials of his own. She activated a projection screen, showing a timeline of events, beginning with my 25th birthday. As my family watched, we displayed evidence I had spent the previous week gathering text messages from that period, showing my desperate requests for temporary housing that went unanswered, bank records, showing no financial support from my family. After that date and most damaging, the birthday card, my father had given me that final night with his handwritten message, "Do not return until you have made something of yourself." For the record, Barbara continued, "I would like to establish that following Mr. Calloway's 25th birthday, he received zero financial support, housing assistance, business advice, or any form of aid from any member of the Calloway family. Is this contested?" My family exchanged uncomfortable glances. James attempted to interject, but Barbara continued displaying photographs of the condition I had lived in after being expelled from my apartment to my car, with the makeshift bed in the back seat, the gym membership receipt that had given me access to basic hygiene. Furthermore, she added Mr. Segride of .at. Calloway's initial business loan was co-signed by Maxwell Henderson, who also provided housing, employment, and mentorship during the founding period of what would become Calloway Developments. She then displayed a counter-document our team had prepared. This is a legal acknowledgement that the Calloway family has no claim whatsoever on Adam Calloway's business interests, properties, or other assets. It also includes a non-disclosure agreement regarding this meeting and any family matters. In exchange for signing, Mr. Calloway will not pursue potential claims of familial abandonment or emotional distress. My father's face flushed with anger. This is outrageous. We raised him. We provided for him for 25 years. That is what parents are legally obligated to do. I finally spoke, keeping my voice calm despite the emotion churning inside me. Family is more than biology or legal obligation. Family means being there during the hard times, not just showing up when there is money to be claimed. I stood and walked to the window, gathering my thoughts before turning back to face them. 7 years ago, you told me not to come back until I made something of myself. I spent my birthday night in a car, wondering where I would shower the next morning. Not one of you called to see if I was safe. Not one of you offered help during the years I struggled. The business you now claim partial ownership of was built with my hands, my sweat, my sleepless nights. Max Henderson, a man who owed me nothing, showed me more family loyalty than any of you ever did. The room was silent when I finished. My mother was openly crying. Megan stared at the table. James looked shaken for the first time since their arrival. My father predictably responded with anger. "You ungrateful boy. Everything we did was to make you stronger, to push you toward success." "Richard, stop." My mother's voice surprised everyone. She rarely contradicted my father. "Adam is right. We failed him. I failed him." She looked at me directly for the first time. "I knew you were sleeping in your car. I saw you once at the grocery store looking exhausted, counting change to buy ramen noodles. I did nothing. I was a coward." My father started to argue, but James placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Dad, legally speaking, we do not have a strong position here. The documented abandonment significantly undermines our claim." Megan finally spoke, her voice quiet. "I do not want any part of this anyway. I just wanted to see my brother again." What followed was the fracturing of a facade that had held for decades. My parents argued openly, my father accusing my mother of undermining him, my mother calling him controlling and cruel. Megan revealed she had opposed the legal scheme from the beginning. James admitted the case was tenuous at best, but claimed our father had insisted they try. When my father began shouting, Barbara signaled security, who escorted him from the room. The meeting concluded with James, Megan, and my mother signing the agreement, legally renouncing any claim to my assets. In the lobby afterward, my mother asked if we could speak privately. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I want you to know I am deeply sorry, Adam. not just for that birthday, but for every time I stood by while your father crushed your spirit. I was too weak to stand up to him, too afraid of conflict. It is no excuse, but I want you to know I have regretted it every day. I could not offer immediate forgiveness, but I did give her my private number. I need time, I told her, but maybe we can start with coffee sometime. 2 months later, I met my mother at a cafe halfway between Boston and Connecticut. Our conversation was awkward, but honest. She had begun therapy and was considering separating from my father after 40 years of marriage. She asked thoughtful questions about my business and listened with genuine interest. It was a small beginning. Megan reached out next, apologizing for her silence over the years. We established a cautious text message relationship that slowly evolved into monthly phone calls. My father and James maintained their distance, which honestly came as a relief. The most meaningful response to the entire situation came from Max, who had been my rock throughout the ordeal. When I told him how I had stood my ground, he clasped my shoulder with his weathered hand and said, "That is my boy. Always knew you had a backbone of steel under all that politeness." 6 months after the confrontation, I established the Second Chance Foundation, providing housing job training and business mentorship to young adults estranged from family support systems. The first recipient was a 24-year-old woman who reminded me of myself, full of ideas but lacking resources. Watching her succeed became more fulfilling than any luxury my wealth could buy. The holiday season approached, the first since the attempted legal claim. Rather than spending it alone as I had for 7 years, I hosted a dinner at my home for my chosen family, Max and his wife, my core employees and their families, and a few close friends who had supported me through difficult times. To my surprise, my mother and Megan accepted invitations to attend, arriving with nervous smiles and thoughtful gifts. As I looked around my table that evening, I realized the painful rejection that had once defined me had ultimately revealed who truly deserved to be in my life. The family you choose, I discovered, is often more valuable than the family you are born into. The true measure of success is not in the wealth you accumulate, but in the authentic connections you build along the way. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of you? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayal. And remember, sometimes walking away from toxic relationships is the strongest decision you will ever make. Thank you for listening, and I hope this story gives courage to anyone facing similar challenges with family who only value what you have, not who you are. Do not forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear this message of hope and resilience.